as we talk about trades, and we had the conversation a bit yesterday about the, I don't know, the perception that Danny hasn't been able to close some deals. These rumors sometimes I'm like, all right, did you want him to though? Like, he can't close the deals except for the ones he has closed. Like, I went to FlyersHistory.com. They've made some trades. They made several just on Friday and Saturday. Yeah, I know we don't think of moving around in the draft as like a trade or whatever, but I want to know, does Briere, do you think, I loved Danny Briere's first year in the job. I thought he did a lot of things he really had to do. Obviously, that major thing is drafting Matvei Michkov. That gives you a lot of leeway. And then when you see Oliver Bonk have that kind of draft plus one season, you're like, oh, fucking A. All right, 2 good first round picks. Way to go. But just the moves to get essentially the 2 firsts plus for Ivan Provorov after you move Sean Walker, all that stuff. Move on from Kevin Hayes, do all the things that he was able to do, the D'Angelo buyout, etc. Does now in year 2, for this to be a successful offseason, do you think Danny has to make at least one kind of big move that improves the team, if not in the here and now, for the future? Because that is his job, to make the team better. And can't say he's done that yet this offseason. He's made some trades to, get to next year's draft where they think it's a better draft, but that's essentially like, I traded my lottery ticket for what I think is a better lottery ticket,
Well, so my answer to you on that, Bill, is basically like, look, if we are talking purely about the moves that he has definitely made, I do not think this has been anything special of an offseason. He hasn't done anything really. What has he done? He had a draft that I'm not super pumped about, even if I like Lushenko as a prospect. I'm not giving it an A like I did last year, where I was like, holy shit, that's a hell of a draft. It's like a sure, whatever. I hope you're right kind of draft. We re-signed Garnet Hathaway, re-signed Eric Johnson. He hasn't made any huge moves. No, none of this is huge. The one big caveat, though, and this just comes down to how much credit you want to give him for this. He brought Matvei Michkov over. And, if you want to argue that that was not him, that was his camp, and that was, the Scott St. Petersburg willing to let him go, and the Flyers were just the beneficiaries of the situation, that's fair. But if you suspect that Danny had, and I'm making a little joke here, had a little bit of his fingerprints on that, then potentially you might want to give him a stronger grade, because there's no player that's more important to the Flyers' future than Matvei Michkov. And Danny got him over 2 years early. So that's my answer to you.
I agree with that line of thinking. I want to get your answer to this question as well, Kelly. It's just this, I can't credit him for this year for that, because he made a ballsy draft pick. Whether you feel like he fell to 7, that's luck, but he had to pull the trigger, and he had to be confident that like we were eventually going to get this guy. And then things, I guess we can say he had his hands in it. Whether he did or did it, we'll never know probably. It just kind of all goes back to, this is just more of last year's move paying off. Like, this is him having the guts to do what he did last year and be like, no, he's the best player in this fucking draft, outside of, obviously Bedard. Maybe this is the best player in this draft. He's at 7. This is the easiest draft pick I'm ever going to make. And then it all kind of works out. Or even if you think he negotiated this thing, if he, through back channels or whatever, made it happen, I kind of do just chalk it up to next year, because he was coming at some point. Like, you were getting Michkov, hopefully, eventually. It's early, and that's
but
great.
We didn't know that for sure.
And if you don't, it's a terrible failure of leadership then.
Yeah.
Like, I guess if we're going to say that, then we do have to give him credit for bringing him over. But you would hope when you take a guy, it's with the understanding that he's going to play for the team at some point. It's the 7th overall goddamn draft pick. And at that
well,
point,
actually,
that's the other part of it, is that at that time when they made that pick, they knew that Cutter Gauthier wanted out. Maybe they weren't concrete on it. They thought, oh, he's going to change his mind. He's a dumb kid. But he had already asked out by that point when they made that pick last year. So you had to hit this. Like, he was coming. But either way, I'm kind of chalking it up to last year's success, just kind of carrying over to now something happening this season. And maybe it's 2 seasons early, whatever. But and again, it's July 2nd. The league year started yesterday. So I'm not like killing him, or I'm just saying, Kelly, for this to be a success, does something more have to happen than what has happened already?
Not necessarily, because again, like, we are all operating under the assumption that Danny Briere and Keith Jones have a long-term goal for the Flyers. If they don't do anything this season and they win a cup 3 seasons from now, then was this offseason a success? Yes, obviously. Whatever they did this offseason, it got them to a cup 3 years from now. Like, none of this can really be judged, I don't think, on a micro level. But also, I think what's happening here is that fans are seeing people tweet out rumors, parts of rumors, speculation, all kinds of stuff. And then they assume, like, oh, this is a thing that's going to happen. Like, oh, Shane Pinto's on the block and he's going to get traded to the Flyers. And if he doesn't, it's because Danny Briere fucked it up. Yeah. And like, that's not how it works. And so people are getting this idea in their head that like all of these potential apples are hanging out here and all Danny has to do is grab them. And if he's not grabbing them, it's because he's too short and he can't do it. Like, that's not how it works. And I just think that like people need to just like, first of all, consider the source for everything that you read on the internet. Elliot Friedman says something. Yeah, it's probably true. Charlie O'Connor says something. Yeah, it's probably true. Bob Johnson, 69420, who went to Flyers practice one time and he's saying something. Maybe you don't listen to him. I'm like, just like,
can we not disparage Bobby Joe? All right.
I know. I love him. He's great. I just think that everyone has to stop anticipating things that they don't know are even going to happen and just let things play out. Like, if he does something that's bad, then we can judge him on it. If we find out at some point from a guy like Elliot Friedman, like, oh yeah, Shane Pinto was going to go to Philly, but they wanted Scott Lawton and Danny Briere said no. Like, oh, well, that's a problem. Then we could talk about that. But right now, all of this is just speculation. And it seems silly to me to damn him for things that we don't even know are true. Doesn't make any sense to me.
I do, Kelly, I do agree that, and this is just the perils of being extremely online.
Yes.
You know, the positive of being extremely online as a sports fan is that you get all of the information. You have more info. You know more things than the people who are. You just do. You get it right at your fingertips. Your finger is on the pulse of everything that's going on with your favorite team. The negative of it is that you know everything, in that you're literally getting information overload to the point where it becomes very difficult to distinguish between what is true and what is false, because you're just getting all of the things pumped into you constantly. And it does have the potential to convince someone who is extremely online and is paying attention to every rumor and every report and everything, that because you know everything that was rumored, if nothing happens, you're more disappointed than someone who isn't up to date on every single rumor. They just, like, for someone who is not that online, if the Flyers do nothing the rest of the offseason, okay, they're just like, okay, we don't make any more big trades, whatever, and the end of August rolls around, what is the casual Flyers fan going to think? I think most of those casual Flyers fans are going to be like, you know what? Flyers were almost a playoff team last year, and they just added Matvei Michkov. I think they had an okay offseason. Whereas if you are very online, following every single rumor and every single report and every single rumbling, you're going to be much more frustrated because you feel like something should have happened because you build it up in your head so many times that something was going to happen. So I think that's a completely reasonable point, but that's not even me shitting on people that are very online. I think it just naturally happens when you do it. It's the one negative of it.
And I said a lot of that yesterday. Like, we'll just never know. Like, all right, Shane Pinto, let's use him as the example. If it comes out like, all right, for Lawton and the Columbus pick, they could have got it done. All right, that's a starting point. That's okay. We can talk about that. And if Danny wasn't able to figure something out there, all right. But what if they're like, it's Farabee and 12 and we're not moving? All right. Well, then no.
Yeah, I don't like you that much, Shane.
Then he didn't get something done that would have been objectively bad.
Right.
Like, there's also that. I will say, though, like, at a certain point, and this may be counter to what I said yesterday, because I think they kind of may have telegraphed for us by kicking the can to next year's draft. This is going to take a little longer than we think. And guys like Garnett Hathaway and Scott Lawton that are still here. We want them here because this rebuild, it's going to be about the length of their contracts, you know? They might be telegraphing that for us, but at a certain point, and this is just us being impatient, we want to see the players who are going to be here. We got one. Yeah, we got one. It's Mishkov. That's awesome. We think some of these guys, they gave Owen Tippett the long-term contract last year. We assume he's one. Cam York, we all really, I think, started to enjoy by the end of this season, last season. I know I was on York, and by the end, I was like, I like him a lot. You know, like, we're starting to see it. Goaltending, at least we have a big roster of goalies. One of these guys hopefully works out. We'll see. It's all voodoo. But, like, I guess I just want the tangible, like, all right, fucking Trevor Zegras, it's him. You know, like, what? And that's just the example. But I just want to know who we're backing on being the dudes who are going to lead us into this next great Flyers era. And many of them aren't here yet, and it might just be a little longer than we were hoping, I guess. And I can't call this offseason a success because what it define it, but we won't know. Like Kelly said, we won't know for years down the line.
We all silly like the mayor.